Okay, good afternoon, everyone. If we could reconvene. Thank you very much. So I'm Robert Kiley. I'm from the Wellcome, and I have the fantastic pleasure of trying to report back the results of our survey. So in the UK, we have Strictly Come Dancing, which is a huge programme for us UK and for the UK audience. And they make a real big fuss about the voting has started, then the voting stops. We're not going to do that. The voting has started and the voting has stopped. The results have been collated, independently checked, all that sort of nonsense. And I'm now going to disclose the results of the survey. And I think one thing you'll see is that there may have been some ambiguity about what the questions meant, but we can try and work through that. So let's have the first slide. So in terms of numbers, again, whether this is a statistically significant number, I don't know, but there we are. 118 people responded to this. The overwhelming majority of those were in this room, so thank you for completing that. So question one, which may have been open to some doubt again, was really the question, I think, was trying to get to the point of journals should start publishing peer review reports. The question of identities, I think, was meant to be completely separate from this. Should peer review reports be published? And as you can see, there's a pretty loud, clear statement here that, you can see that 4 out of 5 people are really supporting the sense that these reports should be shared. So I think that is a really important message. And one of the things we're going to try and take from this as one of the organisers of this meeting is try and work out what we do next. And though we're only halfway through day one, and we've got lots of exciting things this afternoon and again tomorrow morning, but this will give us a sort of barometer of where the sort of attitudes of this group is, and it will help us inform our future decisions. So I think that's a really impressive and powerful message. Somewhere, I think, slightly less ambiguously, should referee reports should be assigned DOIs and become part of the scholarly record. Again, almost 4 out of 5 people saying that should be the case. Again, about 10% of people disagreeing, and 10% of people not really sure what it meant. But again, that 4 out of 5 people saying that reports should be open and they should be assigned a DOI to make them discoverable and part of the record. Discoverable is actually this part of it. So having now disclosed these reports and assigned a DOI to them, what was the view of the group in terms of making sure this stuff could be found? And again, you're pretty much the same answer here. I did wonder at one point whether there was going to be an agree all on the questions, so you didn't have to keep saying whatever. Anyways, you can see, again, about 4 out of 5 people strongly supporting the view that these peer review reports should be discoverable through services like PubMed and Scopus and other works like that. And again, just this sort of 10% of people who are not sure and 10% who disagree with that statement. Once we've gone through these, only a couple more slides, I think we'll open it up and see how you react to these. Do they resonate with what you expected to see here? And I suppose this is a real big question. And this, I think we were trying to get here, the sense of having posed a question 1, should reports be open? This question is going up to that second issue about the identity of the reviewer. And here the question is specifically about whether journals should give reviewers the option to have their identities made open. So it's not like a mandate, thou shalt make all these reviews open, but should a journal consider giving the reviewer the option to make their reviews open and I presume signed with their name? And you get it's slightly different numbers. Slightly is the key word there. You can see it's, again, 3/4, 75% of respondents agreeing that the identities on a when required or when desired should be made open. And one for us, one for me as a funding agency here. So it doesn't quite say how we should do this, but we should develop a system of recognizing and crediting scientists for their contributions. And again, this one's an even louder clarion call that yes, funders should do something. 85% of people agree that we should do that. And again, as a funder, we need to try and work out what that actually means. And one of the things, one of the things in my session this morning was this sense of just signalling, in a grant application form that we're interested in knowing about your peer review activities, just signalling that, even if we're not quite sure how to actually make use of this data, that may be quite a strong message to send. So I think we need to work out what we mean by trying to develop this system, but it's clear that there's a sense that we as funders need to recognise the amount of effort and work which goes into writing peer reviews, reports, and we need to find some way of crediting people who do that. And then I believe this is the final question. This issue around whether all the people who actually contribute to a peer review report, and we sort of know instinctively that, it may be the senior PI who we initially ask, but maybe the junior members of staff get actually asked to write that. So should all people who contribute to that report, should that be disclosed to the journal as standard ethical practice? And there's almost 9 out of 10 answers said yes. So that seems to be a very, very clear black and white case. So that's the end of they're the slides, they're the scores. So I'm happy now to, about 15, 20 minutes before we move into the afternoon session proper. Any comments either on this morning's session in general or on those results? Stunned silence. So I think Neil.
Thank you. Neil from NIH. So for the question where it asked, should journals give the reviewers an option to make their names public? I'm wondering how many people voted no because they thought reviewers should not have their names public under any circumstance, or reviewers should always have their names public under all circumstances and not be allowed to opt out. Or I guess there may be a third permutation for that.
I don't know the answer to that because yes, yeah.
Yeah, so the other permutation is how many people said no because they thought it should be on the author to decide whether or not they wanted these things to be disclosed, and the reviewers just decided whether or not they actually did the review or not.
Okay, so I think on this whole issue about the identities, it may be worth trying to do some sort of, perhaps not another poll, but some sort of sense of, from the audience, their sense of where they actually land on the open identity issue.
Hi, yes. Right. Over here, Robert. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Joe.
Joe McIntyre from the EBI. I know this is an anonymous poll, but I can't imagine why you would not want DOIs for reports. And I wonder if anyone here who said no dares to explain why they didn't want to do that. So
just say that in sort of true open science way, this data will be publicly disclosed. It will be anonymized, so we won't unfortunately be able to identify who said no to that, but we will put the data up on the Asset Bio website. So is there anyone who said... Sorry, say again, Mike? Oh, maybe. He's up already, thank you. I don't know, does anyone want to suggest why not assigning a DOI would be a good thing? Tony?
So the number of people who said no DOI were also the number of people who said no open report. So I guess that's it. If you don't want open reports and you don't want DOI, I don't know if anybody here wants open reports but no DOIs. Maybe we could have a show of hands.
Jessica, did we do any analysis on the correlation of those two? Right, fine. Okay, thank you.
So Jody and I could come back to the anonymous or not anonymous topic, because this is the one that I think there's the most disagreement or discord, or whatever we want to talk. But one comment that was made in our session was that all efforts should be made to dissociate the work from the person who did it. because of course, if you consider the person who did it, then there's, you know, an uneven advantage for that across disadvantaged people, across gender, you can imagine. And so when I saw that question, and I also heard, you know, in our discussion, even the concept of triple blind as I think a really great idea. I'm kind of keen on this. That was what I was thinking, which is that we should make every effort to do that in the process.
Okay, thank you. Anyone strongly disagree with that or disagree?
Triple blinding. So triple blind was even the editor. No, not necessarily. I mean, post decision, the editor maybe. So if we post names, that's forever linked then to a person.
So this is a model which Science Matters makes use of. Do you want to comment on that, Laurie?
Hi. The process of triple blind review is that we have an in-house editorial team that looks for preliminary checks and then also draws up a list of 5 to 7 potential reviewers for the paper. And we assign a handling editor, the in-house editorial team assigns the handling editor and sends out the list of these reviewers with the anonymized version of the manuscript. And the handling editor chooses, prioritizes through an interstate merit list or something of the reviewers, and the invitations are sent to these reviewers. And usually we take the 2 reviewers who provide the review. And the reason that the editor and the reviewers are also blinded is that the editor does not know whether the reviewers take that bid. And in that way, during the process, all of the stakeholders in the reviewing process are blinded. But then after the reviews come in, then the handling editor can make the decision and send out the decision. Through all these processes, all these players are blinded. And only once the paper is published, then the author's identity are revealed. And also the handling editor's identity is revealed. The reviewer's identity remains anonymous.
Can I ask a question? Yep. So I think most of us feel that it's possible to, you blindfold people, you blind people, but they like you do when you're kids at a birthday party trying to hit a piñata, and that they're not really blind. Like I think most of us feel like we know who the authors of papers are even when we. So I'm just curious if you've done enough, have enough experience to know how often people think they know the authors, and if they think they know the authors, how often they're correct, and just whether we really are effective at blinding versus at going through the formalities of blinding.
You want to use the microphone?
That's a great question. We are still, 1.5 in the field, so we're still trying to experiment. We have not done meta-analysis or even questionnaire review. I don't think in fields like biochemistry or cell biology, neuroscience, you can do this. You think that you know who the reviewers could be, but I think most of the time you're wrong because there are several people. And there's also there is this benefit of doubt in a way that you're never 100% sure that this could be the reviewer.
No, I know. I'm actually just curious if you don't know, but you think you know. That also is a problem, and I also wonder if it does seem. I mean, again, I think we need to figure this out if people are going to go there. But I think there are certain papers, probably predominantly papers from very prominent labs who do that it's very easy to tell, and that in fact you're not really unbiasing the system. Anyway, I'd just love to know when there's data on this. I think it'd be
let me bring
great
Theo in.
Yeah, just to say there is sort of published evidence on this, and you can find it in Hilda's blog around the time of the peer review congress last October. Hilda probably knows the stats, which I don't, but something like 65% of people correctly identify.
65. Sounds good.
Yeah. Sorry, we have a microphone for Hilda.
Here.
Yeah.
Hilda. Oh, come on.
So what figure are you going to give us?
So I'm looking to this is about peer reviewers guessing the authors. 46 to 73% of the time, although in one journal, in one trial, it was only 10%. And when you actually start to look at a lot of that literature, it's like the smaller the field, the more likely it is that it's impossible to blind. And the other thing is that the point that I would make about this is that there's this assumption that the discrimination or the prejudice or whatever relates to the individual human being, whereas often it's about a characteristic. And you don't need the name to know that very often. You can tell by the materials used, by the people in the sample, the topic they studied or whatever. That could be what triggers the discriminatory behaviour. So people are making an awful lot of assumptions that haven't really been tested around this, would be my claim. But overall, you say blinding doesn't really work very well.
Thank you.
May I, if I may just add one point. I mean, we don't have a large set to do larger meta-analysis, but there's one thing that stands out is that in our the acceptance rate, we don't see any gender bias, right? So there is a fair and equal representation of both genders in the accepted populace, which is somehow there is a possibility that the triple blinding works in terms of giving a fair review. We don't know that yet.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yeah, we're happy to open it up to our discussions this morning, if that would be helpful. Okay, I think we...
I can make a comment that I made in our, just our smaller breakout session about just anonymous versus not. And just from talking to early stage investigators, a lot of them are the ones that I think really want reviews to stay anonymous because there's a feeling, I mean, it's been said before, I think there's certain concerns about them when they go up for promotion or study sections are basically all senior investigators. And so anyone pre-tenure knows that their grant is then going to get reviewed by one of these people. So I think they're very worried about retaliation in some things. And then, Bodo, I'll just say something about, I love the piece that you and Aaron wrote, but then the other thing I noted was there was a line in there that sort of suggested that the more senior investigators would do the better job of reviewing. And so I think that there's a little bit of perception that there's deference to the senior investigators in the review process. And so I think that the early stage investigators feel that their reviews aren't going to be taken as seriously because they are early stage and that the senior is going to win out. So I think these are things to consider in this that, are just important aspects we talk about. Yeah, Bodo?
I'm not sure which part you're referring to, but I think
the part was when you said, "Oh, it would be so great if the early stage can learn from."
Was more, it was in
senior?
part of the consultative peer review process. I mean, that the consultative process could be actually used as a way of training newcomers.
But the flip side to that is it almost suggests that the senior person might do a better job, which is what we need to get away from. And so I understood what you meant. And
I just meant it as a training opportunity.
I'm just saying there's this other side to it that we need to keep in mind, which is that sometimes they feel very disadvantaged or that they're just not going to be taken as seriously. So
I think I totally recognize that the anonymity may be particularly important for early career scientists. It's particularly true in the peer review process that we have today. Yeah. Now, it's possible that if the peer review process changes over time and becomes actually much more consistent, the way that the peer reviewer first and foremost talks to the author to improve the manuscript, then it may actually not be so risky anymore, because if you are becoming in some ways an ally of the author by providing ways to improve the manuscript, not so much helping the editor to reject papers, but helping the author to improve the manuscript, maybe it becomes easier then to sign.
Yeah,
so I mean, there are some steps necessary before that.
I agree. And another great point that I think came out of our breakout session that I didn't communicate earlier when I gave the summary was just that everything takes time. So people were initially even nervous about putting preprints up. And now that that's becoming much more standard practice, like, the activation barrier there is gone. And that this whole process of what we're doing probably does need to be stepwise. just to get people, we just can't go all in, even though, I mean, like I said, I love the idea of changing it completely, but at some level, getting people used to the first step. So if we can get the open reviews, then maybe in time there won't be such a stigma of putting your name on it, especially for the early. But I just want to really respect that opinion that that many of them have voiced to me, just because again, we're trying to ensure the system
I wonder if
moves
I could
forward.
I wonder if I put Stuart Taylor on the spot, because he published something on the ASAP Bio blog about this issue about early career researchers being, scared of criticizing their seniors when, a week down the road they may be facing in front of them trying to apply for a grant or try and get promotion and tenure. Stuart, you commented on that. Do you want to? Can I force you to? Can you give this microphone to Stuart?
Yeah, I think basically the point I made on the comment that I posted on the ASAP Bio website was that I recognise that early career researchers have this anxiety, but I don't think we should have a system that builds that sort of bad behaviour of senior scientists into it, if you see what I mean. I mean, if senior scientists are going to behave in that sort of way, so if these fears are justified, then that's a problem we've got to fix out with any peer review system. So I think we perhaps need to aim a bit higher than this. Instead of just saying, oh, well, we can't do that because senior people might behave badly, surely we need to fix that. That's kind of the point I'm making. However, I know that's very easy to say. I don't know how you necessarily go about it. But I think that's a research culture question.
Okay, Theo's got the microphone, and then over here. Go Theo.
So I just wanted to come to this point about early career researchers and more senior ones and peer review. I have some anecdata, and then my new term, which is that if you want technical review, go to the early career researcher. And if what you care about is this the right selection for my journal, go to someone who is experienced at your journal and knows what you want. And so that will tend to be more experienced reviewers, let's put it that way. And I really think it's important in all the discussions that we're having about peer review that we separate whether we're talking about this technical quality control aspect or editorial selection by some journals for what it is that they're interested in. Because I think we had that last night as well, that they're completely different questions being asked, and they may be asked of different reviewers and different advisors in different ways.
Thank you.
I think that what I've certainly heard when junior colleagues have come to me is the anxiety isn't just about bad behavior by senior reviewers, but even the experiment at eLife. I've had people come to me and said they were asked to be a reviewer at eLife, and they were very hesitant because they knew that they would have to share their views with senior colleagues in the editorial roundtable that goes forward. And they were very concerned whether or not expressing their real views could somehow come back to them in their vulnerable state. And so I don't think it's just the bad actors. I think that there is concern out there. And not just with releasing the name on the review, but in the review process.
Thank you.
I wanted to make a comment, but not about anonymity, so I'm not sure. But so there was some a comment in our section about one reason for open peer reports that we haven't really discussed yet, and that is that it really protects us against predatory journals. And I think this is a particularly important point for open access journals. I think them publishing the peer reports will really separate them out from journals that actually claim they have a peer report, but peer review, but actually don't have it. So I think that's especially for open access journals, I think it seems like a no-brainer to put that stamp of quality there by revealing what the peer review process has been.
So at a stroke, the predatory journals problem could be solved.
Exactly.
Because okay. Sounds like a good win.
So I picked up a comment via Twitter where somebody actually did explain why they would be for open reviews, but not for having a DOI on the review. And their argument was that if the DOI is attached to an author's paper, then on the next time the author submits, somebody might point back to some silly mistake that they used in that review and use that to argue why their subsequent paper or grant application shouldn't be considered or whatever. I just wanted to put that out there. There are people who think that, and that's why, maybe why.
I wonder if Rebecca or Vitek has any experience of, I don't know how many peer review reports you've now published on F1000, but if you've any experience of people sort of misusing them?
I won't answer this question, maybe Rebecca will, but just to point out something to think about. There is a very big difference between...
You need to go closer to that.
Sorry. There is a difference between refereeing for rejection and refereeing for correctness. I think that I can see that there can be a real anger when people say somebody has made my article to be rejected even though it is correct, for example, which can happen. But there is something different when the refereeing is for correctness, and even if some junior person points out to a senior author that they found something that affects the correctness, I can easily imagine that the senior author will acknowledge and like the fact that somebody helps him to. There's two quite different situations, and the emotional responses is quite different. We didn't come against any real anger at our system of open review, but we of course have no rejections.
That's true. Okay, so give the microphone to Stephen, and I think we'll call this the last question. Stephen.
Stephen Curry, Imperial College. Just to answer the point about why not attach DOIs to reviews. I mean, the motivation there seems to be, well, I'd like to hide my mistakes. I have to say, I would trust someone far more who's prepared to admit their mistakes than somebody who gives into behavior that is concealing them.
Very good, thank you. Okay, I'm going to draw this session to a close. I think that was really useful. So the poll is going to be helpful to us in working out our next steps. It's like a barometer of what we could do next. But I'm now going to hand over to Jessica for this afternoon session. Thank you.